A overcast, cool morning here in South Africa. It is about as kind of cold as it's been in a while, so hopefully it'll warm up a little bit later as the clouds separate, and hopefully a little bit of sunshine will come out at some point. The cloud doesn't look too thick, so I think the sun should come out at some time. Now, my name is Tristan. On camera I've got a Senzo. There we go. And so Senzo is saying good morning. It is a very, very, very warm welcome to all of you, and I hope that you are going to interact with us lots this morning. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or YouTube chat. Now, the plan is for the morning. One is that we've got Brent Leo Smith mended, and seems to be that he is feeling better, so he's going to be back out with us. We're also going to have Steve on walk. But for us, we're going to check all the western sides of Djuma. I'm going to try and see if we can find any sign for Hukamuri, Shadulu, or even see if maybe the Nkrumah Pride pushed back further west again. Interestingly enough, I believe Steve had a very exciting sighting of the Nkrumah Pride just after we finished the show last night, so I'm going to leave that for him to tell you all about, because he sounds like he had a really cool time with them. Good. Now, we're on Philemon's at the moment. No sign of anything. We had a bit of rain last night that unfortunately has probably washed away 90% of the tracks that we're going to be looking for this morning. I can't even remember what time it was, but the rain came in. It must have been early hours of this morning. And it didn't rain for long, but it seemed to rain with a little bit of force. And so now seeing tracks is almost impossible at the moment. So we're going to try and see if I can find them. Just trying to get a bit of light on the situation. It is quite dark this morning. It's not very kind of good for tracking. It's the sort of light is not incredibly sort of bright, and that makes tracking a little harder. So just trying to look as we go. But this is a road yesterday that was covered in lion tracks. Now today you can't see a single lion track on it because of that rain. Oh, hello Impala, sorry I didn't even see you there. You were lying down in the grass. Luckily it wasn't a lion or a leopard, or I might have missed it completely. It's time to wake up, Tristan, come on. So there is a male Impala that was having a bit of a nap on the grass itself, and they sleep a lot on this fire break area. We see them regularly on Philemon's cutline, just because it's a bit more open and it's easier for them to see what's going on. Good. Now I believe Brent is up and about, and like I say, he is feeling better, so let's go across to him and see how he's doing.
Yes, welcome. I'm feeling much better. You nearly got to see what I ate for lunch yesterday on drive, but I have recovered. And we've got a lovely little Katydid who's been catching a ride. He just landed on the car. Good morning, my name is Brent Leo Smith, and I have the Batman on camera. And I love Katydids, unless they're in my room, because they have the ability to create the most incredible screams. Oh, look, he's cleaning his foot. I'm going to try to get him onto the dashboard so it's easier for Craig, because I move around too much. And it's a female Katydid. When she lifts up, you can see her ovipositor, her egg-laying device, or she's tucked it up now. But a female Katydid. Now, they can create some of the most incredible noises by rubbing their legs, the back legs together. It is incredibly loud. And often when they tend to do that, they happen to be in the highest corner of the roof. Now, there we go, she's cleaning her feet again. And you can see those very, very powerful and big back legs. It looks like she might even be getting ready for a leap into the abyss off the car. Now, most of the Katydid species, is the opposite to grasshoppers, are nocturnal. And so she's obviously was flying somewhere after a night out on the bushes, feeding away. I'm just trying to see, come on. Now, yep, so you can see those feet are very, very important for her. So she likes to keep all her feet clean. And also with her saliva, it'll add a bit of stickiness, so when she needs to grip onto something. So what she's going to try to do is find a nice green patch during the day and what to hide up on. And look how incredibly long her antennae are. Now, those antennae are for various different reasons. A lot of it is to pick up possible predators, also to pick up possible mates. So, a very, very cool little insect. Kalina, you are spot on. The noise is to attract mates. And it's normally the males that make more noise than the females to attract them. And in some species, the females will have longer antennae to pick up where the males are. Now, I've just noticed, I've been looking for this ever since I arrived back from in the Sabi Sands. I'm going to just have a quick look because I haven't seen many of them this year, the African vagrant butterfly, and their little caterpillar or larval stage is one of my favorites because they've got awesome coloration, but also their defense mechanisms are so wonderful. Their body feels like sandpaper, and they seem to really like this exotic plant that grows here. So this is not this is called a peanut butter cassia, and actually comes from South America. But I've just noticed that this one has been heavily fed on by caterpillars, and I'm hoping that there might be, I think I might be a bit late. I was hoping that there might be one or two African vagrant larvae around that have been feeding on it, but I can't see any, unfortunately, because they're very, very cool. So they've got multiple defenses. Their body is green and black, so it blends in very well. Their skin is like sandpaper, and when you touch them, they have a very cool jump reflex. So it moves quickly and very jerkily. That might give a bird or whatnot that's trying to feed off them a fright, and enable them to then just keep still afterwards and escape detection. Okay, well, we're hoping that the lions and leopards don't evade our detection. Well, it looks like our katydid friend has decided still not to jump into the abyss, so we'll see how long she lasts. In the meantime, let's go send you across to Steve, who's on foot.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing very, very well this morning. And welcome to a bushwalk safari with myself, Steve Falconbridge, joined on camera by Fergus, and we're obviously joined once again by Herbie, who's assisting us with the tracking and the safety on this magnificent, cool morning in Djuma in South Africa. We are on a mission, sort of in a southwesterly direction at the moment, looking for who knows what. We are too excited. Please feel free to send through your comments and questions to #SafariLive or follow us on the YouTube stream and let us know what you'd like to see. It is a very nice, cool morning, so bring all your equipment with. Don't forget your binoculars like I seem to have done this morning. I suddenly felt very naked on my chest. What can you do? What can you do? I find mornings like this relatively cool are not that good for birding, but you never know. Maybe on our way back the birds might pick up. We find a lot of animals through tracking, but then we also find a lot of them just bumping into them. It depends what we're looking for. We don't generally track elephant and impala and kudu. Those sort of animals we just sort of come across, but we go out in search of leopard and lion, and when we find their tracks, we put in a lot of effort to try and find them. And by understanding the road network and the direction and where the water is and the game paths, people like Herbie and Tristan and Brent, who've been here for a long time, have a very good understanding of how these animals move. So if you find, for example, we're just crossing another road now, if you find some tracks along a road, you kind of get an idea of a potential game path or what might be in that direction when they're moving in a certain direction. And then you can just drive around, and if they don't come out the other side, it's a very good chance that they're inside that block. So when it comes to tracking, that is what we do. But in conditions like this after rainfall, as Tristan has said, 90% of the tracks are washed away. So there was a thunderstorm last night at about, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning, and it just bucketed down, and there's not a single track to be seen anywhere, because what we know when the rain comes down like this is that there's water all over the place, there's water on the leaves, so the animals don't have to go very far. They can just kind of drink it off the leaves and stay where they are without having to mission all the way to a water point where it's potentially dangerous. Robert, I would love to show you some elephants as well. We saw one yesterday. I have no idea where they've gone. This is my first season working here in Djuma, so maybe two individuals like Tristan or Brent might know where the elephants have moved to. It's possible they've moved to the east to the basalt plains there, where the rainfall causes the grasses there and the knob thorns there to be beautiful. So that's my theory. They've gone that way, but Let's go over to either one of those two and see if they know where the elephants have gone.
I don't, Steve. I've been wondering the same thing, but you might find you're right that they've headed up towards the basalt plains. If there's been some good rain up in those areas, then you will find that the ellies will go that direction. They like that kind of grass that comes out of there and the nutrients they can get from that area. So you'll find that they do that. And also the basalt plains areas have most of it didn't get much rain in the early summer, and they've got a lot of rain recently. So that's maybe why the ellies have moved in that direction. Also, the weather hasn't really been good weather. You need sun and sort of dryness, and then you get a situation where the ellies come out and they move towards the water points because there's not much water kind of between them. Whereas now, after a bit of rain, they find water in little mud wallows in the bush and lots of thickets that they can go into and try and hide out from the wind and the cold and the rain. And so ellies are not always our most seen animal when we have conditions like this. So we'll just have to see where they go. But I know, like I said, there was a big herd around Sydney's dam, not yesterday, the day before. So hopefully they'll come our side and we'll be able to find them and see some ellies. There's been an ellie drought of late. I've seen very few ellies at all. Right, no sign of any of our lions coming this way, no sign of any leopards so far. Not that we can see very many tracks at the moment. I'm kind of having to sort of scan with the eyes squinted to try and see any footprints on the roads. It just kind of most of it has just been rained on, unfortunately, so we'll need to find tracks that are on top of the rain, then we'll be in the winning seat. So leopard girl, the biggest animal I've seen taken down by a leopard. I've seen fully grown kudu bull taken down by a leopard, which is a massive individual. A rather large giraffe, not a fully grown one, but not a tiny baby either. That was actually Tingana that took that down. Fully grown wildebeest, also big. It's difficult because they've also seen them take down a baby elephant, but a baby elephant, when it was a brand new born baby elephant, and so it's not the same size as something like a fully grown kudu bull, but the danger element in that is that much more, given that the female was there and she was not impressed at all, and was lots of trumpeting and chasing of elephants, and she smashed a whole tree that an elephant went into. So it depends on kind of danger versus size, but size I would say probably a fully grown kudu bull or that giraffe. Those are both massive animals, and they managed to bring them down. So it was pretty weird looking at Tingana on the giraffe kill. He kind of was dwarfed by this thing, and they didn't actually manage to keep it. He was mating with Moya at the time, and the two of them fed off it for the day and then into the night, and then the hyenas came, and there was just no way they were going to keep it from hyenas. Unfortunately, it's just too big a carcass for that. But it was a bit of a surreal experience seeing a female and a male leopard sitting on a giraffe carcass. It was a bit weird. It was not something you're going to see every single day. One, because it was two of them, and two, because of this prey animal that they had brought down. So, leopards are very versatile. I'm sure there's reported cases of them even bringing down. In fact, actually, there was a situation where we can't say for sure, but we had Tingana once during a night drive following around a rather old buffalo bull. And the buffalo bull was, during the drought, wasn't very kind of steady on its feet, and it was a little bit sort of struggling in terms of the way that it was walking, and you could see quite weak, and its time was coming. And then we had a situation where Tingana arrived, and we left him that night just kind of literally sitting right behind the buffalo bull, just following it as it was going. And the next morning we came there, and Tingana was feeding off this dead buffalo, and so I don't know if he managed to get it by the throat, and actually the buffalo was just so weak it collapsed and he was able to kind of kill it, or if it just died on its own under its own sort of conditions, and then Tingana just scavenged. Difficult to say, but there was definite bite marks around the nose and the throat area, so maybe he tried to kill it. I don't know. It would be quite a serious feat for a leopard to bring down a buffalo bull, but that's also in extreme circumstances. It's not because it's not because of an easy situation. It was just because of the droughts and those kind of things. But interesting nonetheless. Leopards are amazing animals. It's pretty crazy that they can do those kind of things, and then in the same sort of breath they'll go and attack. Well, they'll eat little things like termites and insects and small birds. Pretty strange that they can kind of go through all of those different things. It just gives you an idea of how well they're able to survive. Cal, I've had a few sightings. It's been a long time in the Sabi Sands, and so I've been fortunate to have seen some crazy stuff with leopards. They tend to always come out with something that will surprise you. You kind of think that they, are not capable of certain things, and then all of a sudden they will just pull something out of their hat. Anyway, I'm sure somebody else who's got many a leopard story is Brent Leo Smith, so let's go find out what the biggest animal he's seen them kill.
Well, yes, I've been lucky enough to see some pretty crazy stuff in my years out in the bush in terms of leopards. Baby giraffe is a big one. Adult male kudu, with a male leopard in Botswana. He took down an adult male kudu. That is massive for a leopard. And I'm trying to think. I've seen leopards scavenge on elephant carcasses, hippo carcasses. But I think the biggest thing I know a leopard has caught is an adult male kudu, which is incredible. Incredibly massive. Now, the male leopard who's caught the biggest things in this part of the world since I've been here is definitely Quarantine. He's caught quite a few sub-adult male kudu to the 2-3-year-old male kudu, which are very big. Female kudu. So, yes. So there is a precedence that certain males seem to definitely focus on bigger prey than others. And also those males that focus on bigger prey also seem to be far less tolerant of hyenas. And yes, Jamie, I think Jamie's seen it twice in the Mara, male leopard with giraffe up the tree. K6 was remembering that. So that, I think he was called the shepherd's tree male. He seemed to like giraffe. Also, I know there's some male leopards around the Sand River that have been recorded taking giraffe. Actually, I suppose it doesn't really. I suppose it counts. It's bigger. A very big prey for a leopard was an adult zebra in the Mara, but it had already been injured by crocodiles and had a broken leg. And then the leopard and the crocodile fed from either side. I didn't see it, so it was the year before we arrived. And so, that I suppose, but the zebra was still alive, and it got out of the water, and then the leopard was suffocating it, and the crocodile came and grabbed it from the other side. I saw photographs of that from what's his name? Chris Boyd, I think, from Silas. They were lucky enough to see that. Mark Boyd, thank you, Nicola. Mark Boyd from Silas, he saw that during the migration. So crazy stuff does happen, and sometimes you're lucky enough to be there. I still think the craziest in terms of hunts that I've ever seen is lion and elephant and lion and rhino. Those have always been the most, and lion and hippo for that matter, but that's more common. But lion and rhino and lion and elephant are really, really crazy to watch, and you've often got to be very careful in those situations where you park, because a stressed elephant just charging around with 25, 30 lions trying to jump on it. Now those elephants are big, they're 15 to 20 years old, and there's certain prides of lions in Botswana that target those young males that have been pushed out of the herds and are pretty solitary. Here we go. I haven't seen, with our late rains, we're starting to see some spiders and stuff that we haven't seen too much of this year. There we go. For those who are arachnophobes, oh, a nice big golden orb spider, female. Now you can see there's a lot of carcasses in the middle of her web, and she leaves the carapaces and exoskeletons of the insects she eats in her web, so birds don't fly through it. Now, it's a big spider, but they can get double, triple the size of that, and they've even been recorded catching small birds like waxbills and firefinches. I'm just trying to see, I can't, if we look around to the edges of the web, okay, so like maybe a little bit down, I think. No, I can't see. I'm trying to see if we can spot a male. So the males tend to hide on the peripheries. Well done, Craig. Well, no, that's a fly. That's been caught. But we're trying to see, so the males, there's a male. Was that a dewdrop? That's a dewdrop spider. That's a kleptoparasite. So those little spiders live on the webs, and they eat the little pieces that are too small for the bigger spider to eat. The males, however, will be on... Oh, she's picked up on something's in her web. Something fresh. See how she's using her feet to test where the vibrations are coming from? She's decided... Oh, it's quite small, the thing that flew into the web, so she's felt those... Oh, and she's got a fly. It's breakfast. Isn't that cool? We've got some hyenas whooping. Back down towards the Mawati. Now, all true spiders are venomous, Sepp. They're not poisonous. Poison is ingested, venom is injected. But all true spiders are venomous. However, this spider has got a sore bite, but it's not a danger to human beings at all. Look how she's busy spinning web around it. She might be quite full, so she might be saving that fly for later. Okay, well, we'll leave her to stock up on her larder. And it sounds like Tristan hasn't got his favorite animal, but he's got his favorite animal's favorite food.
I do, but I've got a very interesting one that we see from time to time in this area. It's the one that's busy going to the toilet, which is helpful to try and discern it from the others. Unfortunately, it's facing away from us, so seeing what makes it unique is quite difficult. But this is an impala that we've seen from time to time that has a horn growing out from its nose area, basically, between its eyes and its nostrils. On its face, there is a little horn that grows out. It's a very underdeveloped one. Given that she's a female, it's not surprising that she's got this undeveloped horn. Now, hopefully when she's finished going to the toilet, she'll turn her face. But there you can just make it out between the eyes and the nose. You see there's a sort of ridge there. There it is. You see it there coming out of the face. So very, very unusual to see something like that. And it does happen in females. Sometimes they will have a little bit of a defect and they grow horns. The horns are very underdeveloped, but to grow it in that area is very, very strange. So there you can just see it kind of on the nose, or the bridge of her nose, should we call it, and that kind of horn has grown a little bit since the last time I saw it. It was much straighter. It's now kind of curled back down towards her face and is kind of growing back towards her, which is going to be interesting to see how she copes with that. But amazing, isn't it? It's not something you're going to see every single day. Like I say, a very underdeveloped horn, so it's a little piece of bone that's grown out with a bit of keratin over the top. In fact, it's probably fine that there's not even much bone in there at all. It's mostly keratin that's coming out, which is pretty weird. Mrs. Grumpy, you say you love this little unicorn. It's very cool, isn't it? And like I say, we've seen this, I don't know, I've seen it twice, I think, shown you guys it twice before. And I think Taylor might have seen it before, or Byron, one of the two of them. So it is an impala that does hang around, normally anywhere between sort of Gallagher and where I am now, just north of Impala Plains. It kind of moves in this western sector, and it just goes to show that some of our impala herds are regular in this area, even though we can't really tell the difference. When you see this individual, it gives you an idea that some of the impalas spend a lot of time. And if you didn't know that there was one that had this, and you looked at them from here, you would never, ever, ever be able to spot the fact that it's got a kind of little horn growing out of its face. It's something that only if you've seen it and you kind of look at the females can you pick it up quite quickly. But I'm just going to reverse back so we can follow her. Let's just reverse back a little bit. There we go. So should have a better view of her now. She's the first one in that whole row. There we go. So now you can actually see it quite nicely, just that sort of little horn sticking out. Amazing, isn't it? Such an anomaly. So, Pearl, you say April 9th is Unicorn Day. Is that for real? Because if there really is a Unicorn Day and we found this impala, that will be pretty weird and quite fun. But it's amazing to me, especially where it grows from. Like I say, I've seen females with horns. Generally, it comes from the top between the ears, like where the males have it. Very seldom do you see them coming out of the face like this. It's pretty weird, but interesting. Mandy, at the moment, no, you can see she's a healthy individual. She's walking around just like everybody else, and it's not obscuring her vision or her hearing or anything like that. So it doesn't seem to affect her in any way. It's also not going to cause any infections or anything of untoward. The size of it also won't weigh her down. It's not going to get caught up in branches too much, so she seems to be fine. I think the only thing is if it grows and continues to curl towards her face, she might have a situation where it's going to cause a bit of damage to her face somewhere or something like that. But for now, it seems as though it's absolutely fine. Jeff, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure males of the impala kind are not picky, particularly because most of the time that they are mating with females is because they smell like they've come into estrus. It's not so much a physical appearance with them. It's not the other way around. Females will often judge males on a physical appearance of their horns and their size, whereas a male just kind of gets driven by the scent that he's picking up. If a female's in estrus and he picks up that she's ready to mate, that drive is there, and he's so hyped up because of the rut and all those kind of things that I'm pretty sure he will mate with a female like that. It's going to be interesting. I mean, hopefully she's around come November, December, January, February, and we hopefully see her with a little one, because then we would know if she has a little, or if she did get mated with. It's difficult to say otherwise. So it really is International Unicorn Day today. Can you believe it? That's absolutely ridiculous that we found this impala on Unicorn Day. What are the chances? It's ridiculously sort of coincidence, but anyway, good. Happy International Unicorn Day, everybody. That's very cool. I don't know what happened, but anyway, how these things happen, I don't know. Anyway, let's go back to Steve. Let's go see what he's up to, where he's walking, and what his plans are for the morning.
Thanks, Tristan. Did you all know out there that the unicorn is in fact the national animal of Scotland? True story, funny as that might sound. So we were talking about elephant movements, and I think for ease of understanding, I have got out my fantastic tree book. Let's have a look at where we are, understand the Lowveld a little bit more, and then show you a cross-section of the Kruger Park to see exactly where the soil is and why the elephants might have moved. So first of all, we're going to go into South Africa. And here we have South Africa. Cape Town is down here in the far southwest, but we are all the way up here in Limpopo and in Mpumalanga province, where you see the green is essentially what this book relates to, and we are over there. Okay, so now I'm going to go and show you a quick picture of the Kruger Park itself. Let me just turn the page. Here is the Kruger Park in its entirety, with much more included. The Kruger Park is this boundary line here, all the way, and there's Mozambican fence line all the way up there. And we are over here somewhere. Sabi Sands is this section over there. And the Timavati and Klesiri are all forming up on this side here. So this is all private game reserves. And you can see how it all falls within a particular color. And this is granite. The pinkish sort of orange is granite. This gray is basalt. We were talking about the basalt before, and then the pink all the way along the eastern side is the Lebombo Mountains, and this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Lowveld. The Drakensberg runs along the entire eastern side here. The Lebombo is along the Drakensberg is on the western side, the Lebombo Mountains on the eastern side, and everything in between is what we call the Lowveld. So if I quickly jump back to a cross-section of the Lowveld, you can see this is west over here, all the way across to east over here, and you can see the soil types. You see how granite takes up a huge portion. There's a small section of sandveld, and then basalt, and then rhyolite. Now, to understand this better, the granite is very, very old rock. We talk about 2.8 billion years, and the granite was magma that never came to the surface, and as everything above it eroded away. This is what's revealed the granite. We don't see too much granite actual visible in this area, but they are very, very obvious with these rocky outcrops, which are quite obvious in some areas elsewhere in the Sabi sands and around. But the soil is very, very hard, it's very, very porous, not a huge amount of nutrients, and the water that lands here goes straight through. So any nutrients that are there move down. So you get very particular type of soil and particular type of plants types in these areas, and this is where we are. But if you go all the way to the east, the basalts there, that is lava that was deposited on the Earth's surface probably 180 million years ago, 130 to 180 million years, and it is very soft rock but very high in nutrients, lots and lots of volcanic material and nutrients, and the soil there is very clay-like, holds the water very, very well, and it gives rise to very sweet grasses and trees. So when there's rainfall in the summer months, all of the migrating animals, including elephant, will move into this area where the food is very nice and tasty. So I hope that answers some of the questions and you get a bit of an idea of where we are. And the diversity of the lowveld is because of those different soil types. And just to jump back to the Kruger Park, what also adds to the diversity, not just the soil type, but the rainfall gradient is lower up here and increases as you go south. So as you go south towards sort of Pretorius, Kuza, the rainfall is the highest that you get in the park. And so you get even more leaching of the soil. So the granitic soils here are even lower in nutrients than further north. So that's why you get so many different vegetation units within this complex of only 3 or 4 soil types. Zep, what would I eat if I was stranded? There is lots of things to eat. Let me quickly grab you some off the top of my mind. I can see there is some magic worry seeds here. Very, very delicious. Let me grab a couple. There's a worry. Look at those. Those are quite tasty. So that's number 1. We're already munching on the whiteberry bush just before. They have fruited again. And they must be this color. If you grab them when they are this color, when you grab them when they're green, do you want to see my face? Should we do it? It's so bitter. It's very bitter. That's why we know birds can see color, because birds will eat fruit when it's ripe. They know when it's red, and Ferg is going to have one as well. Fergie, you want one? Tasty, tasty. You can see how big the seed is inside. Very fresh, very nice. It's almost like a plum. A little bit more bitter than a plum, but very similar in consistency and texture. Okay, so I hope the explanation of the lowveld and where we are explains a little bit more about what's going on and why we see what we do. And because of the soil here, that's why we get quite a similar sort of vegetation unit. And I'm not able to show you hundreds of trees, only that small selection that we've been through. Crafty Stash, Joy and Michael, what happened last night after the drive was really something quite special. Craig and I followed the Unkuhuma Pride. We followed them off-road. You saw that last closing segment. We lost sight of them for a few moments. We continued following them. They crossed another road. We decided to stay in the road and wait for them, just to see what was going on. And then all the youngsters just stood very still with their ears looking in a direction. So Craig and I switched off the car. We listened for some time, and then we heard some running, branches moving, and then we heard the characteristic whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not very good at that, of a kudu barking. We listened, and next thing we heard the lions take down the kudu. It took us about 3-4 minutes to get in there because it was quite thick, and we found the unkuhumas absolutely smashing a female kudu or a young kudu. We're not sure. I never got a look at the head. All I know is it was a kudu because I saw 2 of them walk off with a leg, and there was a tail, but never found any horns or a head. So they practically ate the ribs, everything. They just smashed it. So that was very, very special, and that probably happened 5 to 10 minutes after the close of drive, which is very, very sad for all of you out there. But Craig and I had a marvelous afternoon, evening, The ladies in FC were super jealous of us and were constantly commenting on the radio with things like, "Is this making you hungry?" And I was going, "No, not really. Not really, because, I'm a vegetarian. Watching an animal get eaten alive doesn't do anything to my tummy." Sorry, just a very quick little look here at, this is granite. That is granite. We see them when we look in these little riverbeds. You can see how crumbly it is at the moment, but look how large those particles are. Very sandy, very coarse grained, very, very coarse. Any water that lands on these soils just sinks through to the bottom. Okay, on that note, let's go over to Brent Leo Smith, and hopefully he's feeling much better.
Guys, we tried to find these lions now that Steve had. Craig was with them, so apparently they were somewhere in this area where they got that kudu. But it looks like they might have moved off a little bit. So if we don't get any luck around here, I think we might have to check. I don't know if they would have gone as far as Buffalo's Hook Dam if they had a good feed. They might just be lying happy and comatose somewhere in this area. Well, there's what they were eating last night. There we go. So there are some kudu still in the area. But no sign of the lions just yet. But it sounds like Tristan's got a feathered friend who will be departing for warmer climes soon.
Indeed, I'm actually quite surprised that this individual is still here. It's getting quite late now for Wahlbergs to still be hanging around, but this is one of our pale forms that's still here. It's also one that I haven't seen much of on this western side, so I don't know if it's one of the ones that's kind of finished up nesting around Tundam's or Wahlberg's area and kind of now slowly but surely is going to think about departing, but I'm looking a bit ruffled up there with the wind. You can see the clouds moving in the background as it's sitting there, and kind of slowly but surely it's going to seem as though the clouds are going to get blown away, which is going to be quite nice. But this guy we know is a Wahlbergs. It's quite easy to tell. You've got that little crest that's sticking up, that bright yellow cere, and then you can see a long tail that's sticking out from sort of the tail or the wing area, and then you've got the bird sitting in a sort of quite upright manner. The reason it's leaning a little bit forward more than normal is because of the wind that's blowing, so it's just kind of counterbalancing. Normally they sit a little bit more upright, but the crest and the yellow cere are probably the biggest identifying features on this bird, and also yellow feet. It makes it much easier to be able to tell that it's that. There are a couple of other birds that you can sometimes confuse it with, so booted eagles and the likes, but these guys with that, like I say, with that crest, just gives them away immediately. Now it's sitting probably because of the conditions that we've got. This overcast, cloudy weather is not great for flying, although Wahlbergs typically are not like vultures or some of the other eagle species that will ride thermals. These guys are often a lot kind of lower to the ground and are sort of short flying birds. You'll find them kind of going from sort of treetop to treetop, and then they'll hunt birds, they'll hunt winged owlets from termites, so those kind of things, which doesn't require huge amounts of flying for long periods in order to find them. So you do find them perched quite regularly. It's going to be interesting. I wonder if they stayed a little longer this year just because of the rain that we had. It would be interesting also to know when was the last time we saw Wahlbergs? Last year. So what was the last Wahlberg seen on drives last year? If anybody knows, hashtag Safari Live or YouTube chat, let us know when we last saw a Wahlbergs, and if we have passed that date, or are we in a similar time frame as to last year. Both last year and this year we've had late rain, which has held, I think, some of the migratory birds like Wahlbergs eagles a little longer. I did see a lesser spotted eagle yesterday, I think it was yesterday morning maybe, and so they are around some of the migratory birds, but it must be the last few that are going to start heading back. Funnily enough, I also haven't seen very many redback shrikes this morning. They were around yesterday morning and the day before, but I haven't seen any today yet, which they were everywhere at one point, and it's also much quieter. I don't hear their little spishing sort of chirpy sound that they sometimes have out here. So I wonder if maybe, just maybe, they've started to leave now as well, with this kind of cold front that pushed in and the winds that we've got. Maybe they decided they're going to start heading back north as well. It's always so sad when all of our migratory birds start to leave. I get sad. They provide so much color and sort of variety to our bird life. It's always very nice to have them in this area. Good. Wonder what else is in store for us this morning. Very quiet from an animal point of view, other than our unicorn, which I suppose is special nonetheless. We should take that with both hands, given that it is the day that it is. Oh, Margaret, you are going to get my brain working, because I'm drawing a blank as to what the longest migratory bird is. I'm sure Steve or Brent will know straight away. I do know the answer to this, but I honestly, at the moment, getting old. Just trying to think now. Why can't I think of it? I've read this many times, but I just can't think of it right now. Okay, I'll think about it. Maybe Steve will have the answer, so let's go and send you across to him while I try and see if I can scramble the information in my own brain.
Thanks, Tristan. Sorry, we just stopped for a little bit of what we call in South Africa padkos, a little bit of food for the road. Whiteberry bush, marvelous. Look, I'm sorted for the morning. Very, very tasty, very, very juicy seeds. So this is one of the things that you would eat in the bush, and we are bumbling around from tree to tree. So the largest migrating bird, or the furthest migrating bird, I think Judy H sent a little article on Twitter the other night. Thank you for that, very interesting. It is the Arctic tern, which is now going more than 6,000 miles further than the Sooty shearwater, which is a bird they thought used to cover the greatest distance. 6,000 miles further than that one. They come down from Antarctica, down Africa, South America, and back again. And it's all about feeding, it's all about the movement of fish in the water, and it's at a marvelous distance. The birds can live for up to about 30 years, and they're now putting on these very small little transmitters that weigh about 1 gram on their foot, and they're getting all these zigzagging movements. They don't go in a straight line, they kind of move like this, so they go so much further than they need to, but it's all about energy, and they're feeding along as they go. So that is a marvelous article that we read just the other day, and that's truth, because they got the trackers on the bird now. Before, all we could know about was we'd see a bird somewhere and go, okay, cool. As the crow flies, they've gone from here to there. But now with the actual GPS tracker, they know exactly how far the birds have gone. And I think it's like 17,000 miles or something in a year. Flying. Can you imagine? That's some serious air miles. I wonder if and they have no passports. They have no customs control. They just go. Isn't that marvelous? No security checks. They don't have to take off their shoes or their belt. The good old days, eh? The good old days. Okay. I am a bit of both, Gem Video, browser and a grazer. It just depends on what leaf type. So here is a very nice grass. This is known as red grass, and this is grass that would be associated with basaltic soils. When you go up to the Masai Mara, the red oat grass everybody talks about up there, it's the same species. This is out of 10, you'd say 10 out of 10, and this grows very, very well on nutrient-rich soils. Here in the Sabi sands, we find it in small sporadic places. It's got nothing to do with an overall layout, but in the Mara, this is the dominant grass species that brings in the millions of animals that come there to graze. So this is a very nice species, and when we find lots of it, you could call it very good grazing. But here we find it just in a little patch here. As we keep moving, it's going to disappear again. So a very nice grass to munch on and to graze. Ragu, this stick is a stick I found up in the northern Kruger. A friend of mine actually found it, and he gave it an oil, and then he left it on the deck of the room I was staying in. He went on leave. I needed a stick to go walking. I'd left my stick. I'd been in an elephant encounter one afternoon where I'd left my stick on the ground purely because we had to leave the scene very quickly. We were sitting down, elephants came in, and we quickly retreated up onto the rocks, and I left my stick, and so the next day I needed one, and I found this, and it's marvelous. It is my wisdom stick. It's got lots of stories to tell. It's nice and polished now from my hand, and it's lovely to walk with a stick. You can evade spider webs, you can point things out, you can hit Fergus on the head when he's not paying attention. Very important. Very important to have a stick out here. Pointing out tracks. Also, when you start getting old like me and you want to point out tracks on the floor, it's much easier to point with your stick than to physically go down all the time. You know, you get quite old. Well, talking about getting old and people with injuries, let's go over and see how Brent is doing.
Ha ha, Steve. Ha ha, you're older than me. So, since Steve's come back and Fergus have come back, the old men have come back. So, for a while I think Sebastian and I were the two oldest in camp, but we are not anymore. We've handed over that to Steve and Ferg. So we had tracks of the lions coming out of that thick block. They lay on the road here for a bit, so I'm just going to check round on the next road. Otherwise they're sleeping somewhere between here and Buffelshoek Dam, if they haven't gone north or west or east, but it doesn't look like it. Last night on the sunset safari we saw a very old male lion from the Majinga Lion Coalition. So there used to be 4, there's only 2 left, and apparently both of them are in that really, really bad state, like we saw that male yesterday. So far, no updates on him this morning. He crossed into Arathusa last night. We haven't heard anything yet this morning, but he is about 14 years old, which is incredibly old for a male lion. So currently in the western sections of the Sabi Sands, there are no dominant male lions. There's apparently one 2.5-year-old Ottawa lion who thinks he's the bee's knees. However, we just heard that the Birminghams are mating on Londos, and I think what's going to happen is they're going to push west into that area that is devoid of male lions, which is troubling news for the Nkuhuma, Torchwood and Styx prides. Less so for the Styx than the other two, but these northern prides are probably at great risk at the moment. So they're at very great risk at the moment, the Torchwoods and the Nkuhumas, as the Birminghams are looking to probably spend more time down south and maybe even head west from there. Now, as we were just saying, there are 2 Majingaline males still alive, and both in very bad condition, like the one we saw yesterday, both sort of eking out an existence. Often when male lions get to that sort of state, they eat tortoises and terrapins and anything. Now, even if they had to come across the Nkuhuma pride or anything like that, those lionesses would probably kill a male lion like that, especially if it's not one of the males from their coalition. So it's going to be very interesting what happens with the lions and the leopards at the moment. There's so much upheaval in the dynamics. Okay, we're just checking carefully. I think these are the tracks from when Steve was following last night. Now, one of the biggest myths that is perpetrated out on safari is that bright colors will cause animals to charge and react and everything. So, Paula, most animals see in various monotone colors, especially the predators. The only things that really see in true color are cats. Monkeys. Cats don't really see in true color. So lions sort of see in a monotoned greeny gray, probably very similar to what we see in IR, except without the definition that we see. So strangely enough, the two colours that stick out the most in the African bush are black and white, because they are really, really prominent, solid blocks of colour. So that whole neutral colours and whatnot that you get told to wear on safari is more so as not to offend the other people on the vehicle than to offend the animals, as most animals couldn't care if you're wearing neon pink. Okay, now have these lions arrived at Buffalo's Hook? It's a possibility they do like this area. Okay, so while we keep meandering towards the Buffalo's Hook waterhole, it seems like Steve has found something else on Bushwalk.
Yes, I have, once again, looking at a very nice tree. One of the favourite trees out here, not only from a food point of view, but from a spiritual and cultural point of view, the buffalo thorn. Very easy to see by the straight hook and the backward hook. And this is one of the favourite browsing plants for myself. It's a substitute for spinach and very, very tasty. When the fruits are ripe, you can actually eat them as well. They are red, berry-like fruit with a very hard seed inside. And you must eat them when they're red, and they're very, very tasty. But what I was going to talk about is how this buffalo thorn is growing. It's actually facilitated an enormous amount of growth of two types of grasses. The first one we have seen already is the red grass, the red oat grass, or Themida triandra. And the second one is this wonderful Panicum maximum. Blue guinea grass. There's a lot of common names out there. And talk about grazing and browsing. Here I'm eating the leaves, and here I'm eating the seeds. Seeds are very tasty, and the base of these grass stalks are so juicy. Can eat them all day. As we walk through, we're constantly pulling these up and eating them. And these are one of the grasses that need semi-shade. It's a reason why they don't grow really much up in the Mara, because there's not much shade. They need a semi-shade, semi-sun, and they grow very, very well in the undergrowth like this, protected by trees like the buffalo thorn. Very, very marvelous. But the reason why I actually wanted you to come back to me was we found a rock. And this rock is very easily identified by the very large sort of granules in there and that sort of dark orangey color to it. Now this rock is known as ferrocrete, and it is the youngest rocks you find on Earth at the moment. And a very good geologist friend of mine told me that these rocks actually, when historians look back or a new civilization looks back on the human world, they can actually correlate this rock with the existence of Homo sapien. How interesting is that? So we're looking at about 2 million years, which is very young in the scope of a rock. But these rocks are being formed as we speak. They are sedimentary rocks, which means they are deposited soil particles moving and then getting compacted through lithification. And these rocks are correlated with the existence of the human species. I think that is an absolutely marvelous story. When we think about the granite, 2.8 billion years, that is enormous amount of time, and even the basalt's 130 to 150 million. It's a very long time versus about 1 to 2 million years. Marvelous indeed. We're going to leave this right here where we found it, and we'll continue on. Joy and Dale, if we find invasive plant species, we will definitely remove them. I haven't found too many while I've been walking around, but a lot of the invasive species come in, as I've said a few times before, via the extensive river systems that come in from the west. I showed you that photo of the map. That entire map runs from north to south, and all the rivers come in from the west. So those perennial rivers, those free-flowing rivers that flow all year round, are the bringers of agricultural pests and problem plants. And we don't find too many of them here in Djuma itself because we don't have a perennial river system moving through. But if we do find, we'll show you and we'll pull them out. So we are walking, as you can see. Let's go over to Tristan Dix, who is driving.
Indeed we are. We are driving with very little success at this rate. So we've come to Treehouse Dam now, which means that we'll just have a little stop here and have a little look around as to what's going on and see if there's anything that's lurking. Is that... Oh no, it's just a log. For a second there I thought maybe there was a crocodile that was in Treehouse Dam, but it's not. It's just a log that is positioned kind of... Oh, is it mud? It might be mud. Yes, it's mud. That's what it is. So I thought for a second there it was a croc that was sitting kind of on the edge of the water. I just briefly glanced at it, but it's definitely mud. Now, Treehouse Dam is quiet. There is literally, we have not seen a single track from after the rain. So there's been nothing moving around. Maybe everybody's decided it's bed weather and has decided to have a bit of a nap. So I'm not sure actually where I'm going to head from here. I might head to the elephant carcass just to go and see. We haven't been there for a few days. You never know. Maybe something's lurking around that side. So we'll go and have a little check around there, and hopefully Wendy behaves herself in that area. Now, I'm glad that we resolved the longest migratory bird. It was funny, as we kind of sent you to Steve, I said to Senzo, I'm 99% sure it's the tern, and then I wasn't, I was just drawing a blank, and then when, it was confirmed Arctic tern, then, all the information comes back, which is good. But anyway, that's the way it goes. Sometimes you forget things. Now, Julie, the largest migratory bird. I'm actually not even sure about this, that. What would we say largest would be? Would largest be heaviest, or largest would be biggest wingspan, or would it be... There's different parameters, so there's heaviest and there's sort of longest wingspan. I would say probably, I might be wrong in this, but maybe one of the stork species would be one of the larger birds. Misbehaving herself, so we've got but I don't know, it's going to be difficult.
Terribly sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen, having a few technical issues with Wendy, but don't you worry, we are back with Bushwalk, and we have found a magnificent specimen of a golden orb web spider. This is the female. She is about 200 times bigger than the male, and look at those beautiful colors, the black, the orange. It's very contrasting. It stands out quite brightly, and that is to indicate to birds potentially its toxicity if eaten. I don't know if it is poisonous to eat. What I do know is that it is slightly venomous. If it did give you a bite, it would only give you a mild headache, so nothing to be worried about. It's not one of the dangerous or human-fearing spiders out there, but the name golden orb comes from the beautiful golden web that it spins, and this female actually has got an ecosystem, or should we say a party, to herself. First of all, in her web, which you can see now with that beautiful golden light, there is her junk line in the middle there. That is where the remains of her kills. She puts them there because it stands out quite easily from a distance. You can clearly see that line. It hopefully deters an animal from walking through. And then over here you can see there is a male. Got one. There is a male here. There's two males, in fact, in this web. And what I always marvel at is quite often the males are missing a leg or two. The one male has got all of his legs, albeit one of them is half, and the other male is missing a few legs. And that is because whenever they try to mate with the female, they're living in her web. This guy's missing most of his legs. He's only got 5 legs. He should have 8. So what happens, in fact, is they live in the web and they want to mate with the female. So when they touch the web, the female gets excited about food. She goes rushing off there to go catch the food, and then the male will often drop down a line and sort of escape and then come back again. And he learns to play a very particular tune on the web, a little sort of serenade for the female, you could say. And then eventually she realizes, oh, hang on, maybe this is a mating partner, and then she does not eat him. But it's very common to find them missing legs. So they live in the web with the female, and she does most of the hunting and catching.
That's why we learn guitar, eh?
That's why we learn to play the guitar, to serenade the ladies.
So they don't bite our legs off.
Paula, I have no idea what the average weight is, but these spiders have been known to catch small birds in these webs. They are very, very strong. So a small finch-like bird of about maybe 9 to 10 grams could potentially get caught in these webs. But the thing is the spider won't be able to eat them, and it just damages the web. Hence the fact that they put these drag lines, or often a stabilimentum, to show other organisms that the web is here and to try steer clear. But what is very interesting is we've got a parasitic spider within the web. Ferg's going to try focus on one, and there's quite a few of them there. They're known as a dewdrop spider. And I wonder if you look at it, looks like a little drop of mercury, and they live in the web of the golden orb spider. And they are actually kleptoparasites, which means that they steal. To know what a kleptomaniac is someone who steals. So kleptoparasite is they live in the web of the female golden orb, and they will feed on catch that she has wrapped up ready for digestion. So they don't seem to affect her too much because they're so small, and she doesn't seem to hunt them down, but they will steal bits and pieces of her food. Just like a tick stealing the blood out of an animal, they will not kill this spider, but they are stealing its food. So kleptoparasite, a very interesting symbiotic relationship. And I wonder if you can actually see that mercury-like ball on their bum. CC and Wisteria, we're going to show you how big this spider is. I'm going to come stand on the other side of it, and then Ferg's going to get a bit of a relation in that. You can see how big it is compared to my fingers here. It's about half the length of my index finger. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not afraid of her because she's not going to try bite me. There she is. Beautiful, eh? Absolutely beautiful. And what will happen is after mating and after laying eggs in the tree itself, and she's about as big as, they can get a little bit bigger than that. What is she doing? Is she laying there? Oh, she's sticking some more web. It's possible that her web got a little bit damaged last night. She's going to remake some of it. And after laying eggs in the tree, soon she will die. And then next season they will hatch again. And the whole process of the golden orb's ecology begins again. Ravin and Paula spiders have got a very special mechanism on their feet which enables them to walk over their web without getting stuck. It is obviously unique to spiders. They don't get stuck in the web. I don't know exactly how it works, but the web is designed by them and facilitated by them, and so if they got stuck in it, evolution just would not continue. So they've evolved obviously to live in a web, to produce the web, to gobble it up as well, or to spin it whenever they need, and so they are very adept at not getting stuck. I saw some little eggs over here, Ferg. I was on the other side. I saw some little white patches. Okay, well, it looks like Tristan has managed to get back into a better signal area, so let's leave our spider and go over to him.
Well, we have hopefully found ourselves some better signal. I want to just head quickly towards Janet Jackson's home and see if maybe she's home on a cold day like today, or he, should I say, whichever one it is, and see whether or not they are relaxing in the little hole kind of peering out. Now, we were discussing largest migratory birds, and I wasn't 100% sure what they were, but I went and checked it out quickly just to kind of make sure and see what it was. And interestingly enough, it is a pelican. So the great white pelican is the largest migratory bird apparently in the world, which is pretty interesting. It has a wingspan of over 2 meters and apparently is the largest one according to some articles. Now, I don't know if that just applies to the Americas or if it applies to us as well, but I mean, here in Southern Africa, obviously we don't see much of a migration of pelicans at all, and we don't see much of a migration in terms of any of the other top 10 birds that are in that list. So I'll tell you what the top 10 birds are, that according to a certain list that I found, which would be, let me just get it for us quickly. So in number 10 is the Canadian goose. That is apparently a bird that has got 1.72 meter wingspan, and these geese follow over North America, basically, and they are the most distributed goose in North America. Then you've got the great blue heron. I have a funny feeling this is an American migratory list, but anyway, let's just have a look. Then you've got the great blue heron. Then you've got a turkey vulture, golden eagle, bald eagle, sandhill crane, tundra swan, whooping crane, trumpeter swan, and then American white pelican. It's pretty much all the North American species. So I don't know if this is completely true, but it does say this is the world's sort of migratory birds, but I think it must be the American migratory birds. So maybe somebody can help us and see what the world's is. Be interesting to see. My first thought would have been one of the sort of, like I say, cranes, maybe storks for us here in Southern Africa, but in terms of the world, I'm not 100% sure. Now, no Janet Jackson today as well. That's it. So let's carry on and see. I'm interested to know, though, if somebody can find what our largest South African migratory bird is. I'm just curious to know what it is. T-call, no, I haven't checked the barn owl nest recently, just from the simple fact that I haven't actually been on Chitwa recently. I've spent very little time there, and the time that I was there the other day, we had Kuchava and the little one, and then Tingana, so I didn't actually get a chance to get there, so I might head there today. Now, Sen's on the road over here is a crime scene of some sort. Now, maybe a bit close right here, so the pole might be, or the car might be in the way, but there's the shell of a tortoise, so I need to move a little bit. Sorry, Sens. Let me go back a little bit. Sorry, I thought I had enough space, but evidently not. Let's try a little bit further this time. Here we go, Sens. That should be better. So, it's interesting to see, because this is just the sort of bottom side of a tortoise, but I don't see any other signs of it, and that's very strange. Normally when you have a situation where a tortoise is cleaned up and eaten, then you'll find bits of it broken all over the place. Very seldom that you see them kind of separated in half like this, and still some of the flesh there, but no signs of the rest of the shell. So I wonder if this was maybe killed somewhere else, and then something like a young hyena picked it up and carried it around, or what the actual situation is. I can't see any nice tracks around it, so I think this has been here for a day or two, and then the rain has washed over whatever had walked here. Interesting. That's for sure. But anyway, poor tortoises, they're getting absolutely hammered at the moment. This is about the third dead tortoise I've seen in the last couple of days. Okay, well, we're going to leave our tortoise. We're going to head down towards the elephant carcass. I see there's a few fresh tracks for hyenas going in that direction, so maybe we'll get some hyena action at the carcass itself. I know a lot of you love the hyenas, and so we'll try and see if we can find that. I also hear a grey go-away bird calling quite a bit. Just see, let's just go slowly here. I just want to check. Sometimes they can be a good indicator that something's lurking. No, so quiet now. Okay, we'll carry on down towards the elephant carcass. While we do that, let's send you to Brent, who I think has found what Steve saw last night.
Well, we've arrived at the remnants of the kudu, and I think it's quite a young kudu, just judging by how little of it's left, and the jawbone. It's not a big jawbone at all, even though part of it's chewed off. I think it's quite a young kudu, sub-adult, and the fact that they have all the rib cage, most of the vertebrae are gone. There's only a jawbone and two scapulas left here. Now, I'm hoping that the lions aren't too far away. Now, quite interestingly, even if we didn't know it was a kudu, we could surmise it was a kudu, even if we didn't have the jawbone to look at. Because if you look at some of the undigested stomach contents, you can see all the leaves. And it looks like these could have been eating quite a lot of round leaf teak. So you can see it hasn't been ruminated fully yet, and there's quite a lot of leaves inside it. Now, the other reason I know it's a small kudu is just from the size of the stomach contents. A big kudu would be a lot more stomach. Now, the lions seem to have come back in here, and I think, we heard a francolin alarming not too far away. I'm hoping they're lying up just there, or they're just about to get moving. So we're going to try negotiate our way through this thick area. To see if we can catch up with the lions. Now, since it is National Unicorn Day, I've got a question for you to ponder before I send you back to Steve. Is that why did Scotland choose the unicorn as their national emblem or national animal? Okay, think about that. Hashtag Safari Live. In the meantime, Steve's doing some flowering.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Brent. And marvellous you were able to find that kudu carcass. And I'm happy to see that my assumptions that it was a small kudu or young kudu are correct. And that is purely because we watched those lions just devour the bones as if they were nothing. So the reason I've stopped here is we found two beautiful flowers which are related. Both of them. This is the blue wandering Jew or commelina, and here is the yellow. Another common name for them is Mickey Mouse ears, which you can quite easily see in the shape of them. And these are very well known for, if you use the leaves themselves, you make them into a drink, are very good to cure any bladder problems that you might have. And I've also heard the story that you can actually, there's a little droplet that gets caught in over there, and you can use that as an eye wash, as eye drops if need be. And marvellous to see both of them together. Why one is yellow and one is blue, no idea. I mean, you can see the flowering parts, the shape of them are identical, but it's just the color. So the color itself will actually attract a different type of insect. So yellows, you're expected to attract sort of daytime animals, and blues and purples are sort of more for the nocturnal spectrum. But all flowers have got a UV signature. And we know all insects actually follow UV signatures versus color, so to speak, because they see in a very different level to what we see. But marvelous. Another situation, or another thing I wanted to talk about was, we're talking about grazing and browsing again this morning. I found another beautiful flower, not flower but grass. This is very easy to identify. Nikki, I taught you this one yesterday. It looks like some fingers. This is the finger grass, and very, very tasty. Out of the two other grasses, I showed you the red grass and the blue buffalo grass or white buffalo grass. I keep getting that common name mixed up. Panica maximum. This is on a par with it with regards to feeding. And you can tell that by very, very juicy. But now, ladies and gentlemen, how can I be a grazer? It's not possible. If I had to take this grass here and eat it, it would cause me to vomit. It just would. We are not designed to eat grass. The food that we eat, we either need to eat completely raw or we need to cook it. And grasses, if you ever see a cat or a dog, they eat grass, and it's often to cough up a fur ball. I saw one of the lionesses last night eat some of the grass, and she coughed up a fur ball with some bones in it. It's quite revolting, but it is an emetic, which causes you to regurgitate whatever it is you have in your tummy. So we are not able to digest grass. We probably were at one stage, but our appendix has altogether disappeared, and at one stage it was probably quite similar to that of a grazing animal, very large cecum for digesting those sort of things. So we can't directly eat grass. I have tried before. It does not work. Let's go over to Tristan, who has managed to find a dead elephant carcass.
Well, this is not very difficult to find it. It's been here for the last 3 weeks, so it's been fairly easy to go here, and don't really know. Anyway, as you can see, not very much left of this elephant. It's amazing how a few weeks ago this was a full elephant and it was alive, and now look what it's been reduced to. You can see we have a hyena that's also in the area. It's just chomping down on bones, and it is literally all that is left. There's a bit of skin here and there that they've eaten after the rain. The skin has softened up and looks like a blanket that has been dragged all over the place, but it's actually the skin that is around. So there it is. So Kira, who's 11 years old, was asking, have I ever seen a hyena? Kira, we have seen, well, we see hyenas regularly, almost most days, in fact. Maybe we don't get them on the show every single day, but as we live and work in this area, so we get them pretty much every day. We hear them every night. They're very common out here, and there's lots of them. And they love these kind of things where they can find a carcass like this, and it's amazing to watch them go to town and to try and feed off all of this kind of thing. The power in their jaws is amazing, and if I keep quiet, you might be able to hear it crunching down on the bone. Now you can see it's salivating because it's trying to get to that bone. Now I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it. It's a little soft. But basically what it's trying to do, it's trying to basically get any little last bit of nutrients it can. So it's kind of biting down on the leg bones and the sort of areas where there's a bit of maybe marrow that's exposed, and can try and feed off that. So you'll see this with hyenas. They'll come back day in, day out, especially after a bit of rain. Rain basically reactivates the scent a little bit, and it makes everything kind of smell like there's fresh, or at least some meat left. And then they come in and they come and chew the bones, and they scatter things around, and they'll chew the skin. So there's still some nutrients left here for both vulture and hyenas. There's a few vultures that are here as well. There's a white-backed vulture that's off to the right-hand side that's feeding off the spinal area, and then in the distance there's a whole bunch of hooded vultures that are sitting up on the tree over there. So there's 4 hooded vultures all together. I was hoping maybe, just maybe, there might be a Egyptian vulture amongst them, but alas, no sign of our Egyptian friend on this carcass, which is very, very sad. So you see, the smell is almost non-existent now. There's no real smell. There's a kind of a decaying, dead, dry smell, but it's not nearly as bad as it was a few weeks ago. Once all the meat's really gone, and then it's just the bones that are left. Now the bones themselves will stink. This skull and the rib cage and everything else is going to smell horrific for months, and it'll take probably 6 months to a year before you won't be able to smell that dead, decaying smell on the bones. But in terms of us just sitting here, it's not bad at all. It doesn't really stink much anymore. It's actually quite fine just sitting here. It's not really getting any smell of death or anything like that. So Meg, sometimes they wag their tails when they're happy. They just depends on how they feel. Sometimes they'll just kind of give it a little wag just because they have fun and they like to do it. No, not really, no. Hyenas, when they're excited, will turn their tails up. So their tails will lift and they'll become very excitable. Then their tails are in the air quite straight, and they kind of have them up, and there's lots of whooping that goes on with that. But in terms of when they see each other, not really. Tail tends to stay flat and down. The only time we really see the tail wagging is if they've got a situation where they've got flies that are landing on their coat or landing around their rear end like that, and then you just see it kind of flicks to be able to try and kind of chase them away. But they don't wag them to be happy. They are not a dog. Remember that they might look like dogs, but they are not a dog. They're in their own family altogether, and in fact they reckon they are more closely related to cats than they are dogs, which is pretty interesting. But they are not a dog in any way, so wagging of the tail is not the same as a domestic dog at all for hyenas. Jason, I suppose it is a little pale. It's more of a grey colour than some of the other hyenas we get, but hyena coats vary massively. We know that in the Mara, Brent had those leucistic hyenas, so the ones that were very, very white or very, very light in colour. And then you get ones that are very ginger, others that are a bit more grey like this. So it's common to see, different sort of colours on hyenas, and this particular grey kind of brown colour is regular. You see it often on hyenas. Many of our hyenas have that kind of coloration. Also, this hyena is a fairly young individual. You can see its spots are bright, bright, bright. They're still very deep, rich, kind of dark colour. A few little wounds on the back as well. And there you go. See, someone's bitten it on the back and on the spinal area. Maybe had a fight with another hyena. And then also its ears are very, very clean. So you can see the ears are not too torn up. It's normally an indication of a younger individual. But look how it's just still trying to force its way through that bone. It's amazing the damage that they can do and the power in those jaws. I mean, that elephant bone is huge. It's not a small bone. And you can see, look how it's crunched down. You can actually almost see the teeth marks on the edges of that bone as they're going in and trying to feed off it. Amazing. Isn't it incredible how efficient our cleanup crews in the bush are? You would think that an elephant carcass would have lasted for kind of much longer than it did, but when you look at it now and you remember thinking of that massive sized animal that was here, and then you think about what we're seeing now, it is seriously incredible of what's gone on. There's very, very little left here, and you give it another week or so and there'll be probably nothing, and most of these bones will be spread apart. The amazing thing is the skin is to my right, sort of back of the car. When I first drove in, I thought maybe somebody had dropped a blanket, but there is the skin that is kind of just lying next to the car over there. Doesn't it look blanket-like? It does, eh? And that is all elephant skin that is kind of softened up now. Now, that would have been hard and almost crispy when the sun was out for those few weeks that this was dead, because we didn't have too much rain. But now with the two sort of storms that we've had, this skin has all become soft and pliable, and you'll find that that is the perfect chew toy for hyenas. And I wouldn't be surprised that we see, if there's some hyenas here that maybe potentially have young ones, that they drag off bits of the skin back towards the den sides. And the reason why I say that is because they will have a situation where they can then, the little ones can chew on it and basically go after it as much as they want and kind of swallow down those nutrients. And especially if they're teething, it's very, very cool. So, Nola, you're asking if hyena clans oust the young males. Well, the males in hyena clans are generally lower than low. I'm wondering why this hyena keeps looking up into the tree and being quite nervous. I thought maybe just had a quick look in the trees to make sure there wasn't a leopard sitting here and we just completely missed it, but there definitely isn't. Maybe something in the wind, because the wind is blowing over our sort of right shoulder. But so hyena clans are the low. I mean, the males are the lowest of the low, and so yes, sometimes look at the strength in this. Look, watch, it's dragging the whole leg. Amazing. So the males, like I say, are lowest of the low, and so it's often that they kind of get chased out and they go off on their own and they go join other clans and they kind of move around quite a bit. But they don't, in terms of being ousted, there will be sort of competition amongst the males for sure to be the top male, but within the clan itself they are not the dominant force, and so they don't really get ousted by the females. The females are already bigger than them, stronger than them, and they just fall lower than the females are in any case. So it's not really that they get ousted by the clan itself, it's more another male will try and oust an older male to try and be the sort of dominant male within the grouping that looks after that particular clan or mates in that particular clan. But they're not really kind of territorial, very sort of kind of combative males like you would see with male lions or male leopards. It's a bit different with the hyenas. Anyway, let's sit with this hyena a little bit longer, see what else maybe comes down. It seems to be quite nervous, so maybe something else is coming around. Yes, there's another hyena actually coming. That's right. So there's a hyena right in front of us that's just arriving as we speak. So just coming down the pathway. There we go. Hello. A little bit more ginger in that particular individual. So I will just sit here and see, maybe more hyenas are going to arrive as we kind of spend some time, and while we wait for this hyena to move in, let's send you back across to Steve, who I believe is at a dam.
Yes, we are indeed. We're at Treehouse Dam, and in the picture you can probably see a beautiful little sedge. And sedges are quite easy to identify by the fact that they have edges. I know that might sound a bit strange, but if you look at the stem over here, you see that there are actually 4 sides to it, so very easy to remember. Trees have leaves, grasses have arses, which might sound quite strange, and sedges have edges. And the reason why we say grasses have arses is because there's holes in the bottom, and that's a grass there. And a sedge has got edges, and they've got this very interesting sort of leaf structure, always 3 at the top coming off, but the edge is very, very characteristic. I don't know which species of sedge this is. There's a couple of them down here by the river or by the pan, and sedges are a very good indicator of moisture, soil moisture, and very obvious along the edge of Treehouse Dam. There are lots and lots of sedges down here, and you can actually make all sorts of things out of sedge. This is almost related to papyrus. Papyrus is a type of sedge, and as you know, the existence of humankind as we know it, it was written down on very, very old papyrus that was formed in Egypt a very, very long time ago, and that's how we remember and transcribe everything that's happened over 3,000 years ago. Fantastic. All started with a little sedge, and that's where human history, as you know it, began. But what we have also found down by the water here is evidence of what the Bushmen will talk about. And if we have a look in the dung of this animal and the way it's been spread out, it's very clear that there are no fish bones inside here. And we know that this is from a hippo, and it's quite fresh. It smells quite fresh. It looks quite fresh. So it must be quite fresh. And the Bushmen talk about the story, I've told it before, about how the hippo lived in the water with its big mouth and it would eat all the fish. So they need to come onto the land every night and spread out their dung, and then God will come along, or the Creator, and he'll have a look through for any fish bones. If there are any fish bones, he'll condemn him back to the life he had before, out of the water. So hippos are definitely grazers, and they have the ability to digest, or at least ferment, the grass that they feed. But it does come out very poorly digested. Look at that. Look how poorly digested that is. It's almost nothing taken out of there. Less than 40% of the grass in hippo dung is digested. So Ash, has anyone come across a traveling crocodile on bushwalk? I have not here in Djuma, but I have many times before up in the Kruger National Park, right up in the north. We found tracks of them, and we've also found them physically walking. It is quite an eerie feeling and quite a crazy experience. Your whole body you just freeze on the spot, because there's something about that crocodile that makes you just want to stop moving and also want to run away the other direction. But often they're just moving back into the water, or they're crossing land from one puddle to another. Instinctively they know, as the dry season gets more dry, that dams like this are going to sort of deplete in the water, and they'll go somewhere of permanent water resource. Hope that answers your question. I'm going to go up onto the dam wall and see what other activity there is. There's not too many signs of animals down here by the water's edge, but it is quite difficult to really see in this hard soil. Gary, I wouldn't say we've got underground rivers, but we do have aquifers. So there are huge water tables underneath the surface all across the country, and that is in every country actually. And they're not flowing. I wouldn't say they're flowing, but they're all connected to the water table throughout the continent, or throughout sort of southern Africa. I'm sure you find them all over the place. And that's one of the reasons Cape Town is having a bit of difficulty with water, is because they planned a very long time ago a big, what would you say, a rubbish dump on top of one of the biggest aquifers that they have. And so all that rubbish seeps in to the water that they have, and they've got plenty of water, but they can't use that now. Problem. Planning is very important when you're going to develop a civilization. They should have read the transcripts on the Egyptian scrolls that they wrote on the papyrus 3,000 years ago and figured out the importance of planning and human waste and all our waste, so that we can have suitable water for drinking. But unfortunately, as humanity appears to be getting smarter, we are, in my opinion, getting a little bit more stupid as we go. It's all been done before, but yet we think it is all new, and we need to reinvent it. Let's go to someone who has invented most things, Brent Leo Smith.
Well, unfortunately it looks like those Inkahumas are in one of those areas we cannot get a car. We've checked around. So now we're just doing a quick scan to see if we can find any sign of Thandi. Hopefully she might make an appearance. If nothing, we're going to head towards the west and check the sort of northwestern corner. We did have some so there was rain last night, but we can't find any sign of the lions moving. I'm just double checking, and also this is where Thandi was last sort of seen, was hiding, was in this area, same area where the lions are. So she might have moved out when they moved in. You can see it's quite cloudy, not foggy. Yesterday morning was incredibly foggy, Granny Peg. So this is just some low-lying cloud. It is relatively normal for this time of the year. Winter, less normal. In winter, we will get that mist in the early mornings, and then generally clear skies during the day. We will get a few overcast days during winter, but mostly it is clear skies for most of the winter months. It's quite interesting as I've been moving through the different areas. So the area around camp got a lot more rain last night than this eastern area. So it got a few drops, but not nearly as much as we seem to get in the center and the west of the reserve. Quite interesting. And our rain can be very localized out here. As those of you who watched us in the Mara, I mean, sometimes you can drive around the storms to not get wet. You see it there, Craig? Little rattling testicular. So in that in that buffalo thorn, he's disappeared. Don't worry. He went down into the grass. Let's see what you think about the unicorns. Tim. Because ... Scotland, I suppose that is a viable one. Haha! Now, Ed is onto a sort of tract because it would make the Crown as in England mad. So it actually comes from medieval times when the Scottish and the English were warring, but it wasn't the reason why. It wasn't to make the Crown mad, although that would have been a bonus added add-on to. Okay, we're waiting now. Let's see if anyone's got this. So you're spot on, be truthful. That the unicorn was used on the Scottish coat of arms in the Middle Ages, but there's a very specific reason why it was used, and that's what I'm looking for. Let me see what else we got. Well done, Laura. Well done. You are correct, Laura. So, in mythical beliefs, unicorns are the enemies of lions and can kill lions. And the emblem of the British Crown, which was trying to invade Scotland and take over Scotland at those times, was of course the British lion. So that represents the Crown of England and the English. It represented the English, so the unicorn was the animal that could kill the lion. That is why it is the Scottish national animal. There you go, a bit of interesting folklore there. Now, there's no sort of unicorn equivalent out in Africa, but we've got some incredible mythical beasts that are said to live in Africa. I think, my favorite is, the Kulikamba. Kulikamba, it's coming for you. Kulikamba is a very specific mythical beast to a certain part of Central Africa, and Gabon in particular, and to a certain tribe there called the Miene. And the Kulikamba is an bipedal ape man, and something crossed between a gorilla, a chimpanzee, and a human being, that is said to live in the forests that surround the Ferdin Vaz lagoon. So there we go, Kulikamba. There's a mad Frenchman out there who believes in the Kulikamba, and he was trying to convince me the one day of the Kulikamba's existence, but he got his anatomy class a bit mixed up because he was mixing gorilla and chimpanzee bones to try and make this thing that stands up. So yes, it was an interesting conversation, and the more you argued with him about that he was mixing up the vertebra from a chimpanzee or from a gorilla on a chimpanzee, he got more angry with you. So to be friends, we just decided to stop arguing with him. Grey-headed bushrack. Okay, so zoom in center frame where you were, a little bit to the left. Okay, in that little acacia there. Zoom a bit more, a little bit down. He's just behind that branch there. Let's have a look. He should pop out in a second. Psst, 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 psst. And he's just in there. So you can see, that's where he landed. And I didn't see him fly on. Let me just try to move forward a little bit, okay? Just keep an eye, see if you see any jumping. Just try to see if we can have a look behind. He could have hopped up into those thorny thickets. Or is he carried on? They are one of the more... he flew. Darn it, he flew out of the Tumbuti. They're difficult ones to get on camera. But so, this Frenchman, I'm not going to mention any names, he eventually collected all his chimpanzee gorilla concoctions, the only way the only thing I can describe them, and sent them off because no one would listen to him. He paid a huge amount of money to send them off to Paris to an anthropologist, and who came to the same conclusion as the rest of us. It is a combination of gorilla and chimpanzee bones, not a new upright species of bipedal ape that has been hiding in the Ferdinand vase. Now, another one is Mukala Mbembe. Mukala Mbembe is another Congo forest story about this massive thing that makes massive noises that lives in Lake Tel in the DRC. And what is... apparently Luke went to look for Mukala Mbembe. We're pretty sure we know what Mukala Mbembe is now. It's just a very, very loud, slender-snouted, very large, slender-snouted crocodile. I worked with a guy up in Gabon who's sort of the leading expert on reptiles. That's not something you see very often out here. It's the Torchwood staff going home. Obviously, they don't have any guests this weekend. But so it's just from the sounds and stuff it's made. So the slender-snouted crocodile makes an huge amount of varied screams and noises. I'll see if I can find some sounds of it for you. And that's one of the theories, that it's especially there in a very wet area, and there's quite a lot of big slender snouts in that area, that it's a legend probably started and based off the noises and whatnot that come from the slender snouted crocodile. Anyway, I'll see if I can find you some of those sounds that they make. And you can actually get them to make the noise. If you tap the side of your boat, they'll start roaring at you sometimes. But in the meantime, let's go to the animal who has a deal with the Nile crocodile, according to Zulu folklore, the waterbuck.
Well, Brenty, I can imagine that he'll just go on and on and on about mythical stories all day. Brent loves a African tale or mythical story and will tell anybody who's willing to listen, so I'm sure he's got many. But what we've got is probably three of the cutest, fluffiest, warmest animals this morning. There's three of these little baby waterbuck that are all together. Surprisingly enough, though, there is not a single adult that I can see anywhere near these three, so why they're on their own, I have absolutely no idea, and why they would be kind of sitting by themselves in this area is pretty strange. Generally, waterbuck of this size are very close to mom, and so I'm surprised to see them all on their lonesome. But how cute are these little guys? Look how fluffy they are. Yes, there you go. I would imagine so. So Nikki says all the girls in FC are oohing and ahhing and making cute sounds. I'm pretty sure that would be the case. I didn't think anything differently. Know how the girls in FC gush over these little guys, but they are very cute. They're this probably some of the cutest animals that we actually have out here. Now, they need to be careful. They can't walk around like this by themselves, because otherwise they are a prime target for the likes of Tingana and Hosana, both of which would probably love a waterbuck snack. And so they need to be a little bit more careful about what they're doing, because if they're going to sit out in the open like this by themselves with no adults, they are going to make themselves a target for any of the predators that we get out here. So things like wild dogs, even lions, if they see this, will take, well, they wouldn't even second guess the chance to go after one of these guys. So they need to be careful, and in all likelihood need to find their mothers and their adults to be able to try and stay safe, because, like I say, if they stay like this, they're going to get themselves into a lot of trouble. But they really are cute. They've probably got to be one of the most cutest animals when they're a baby. I mean, any baby animal is cute, but these guys, just because of how fluffy they are, I think is what makes them kind of appear almost teddy bear-like in a way. Very, very cool. Now, the reason why I worry for them is because we are Chitwa Dam Wall, and we know that Tingana and Hosana generally are never far from this area, and so they're going to have a tough time of it if those two boys are around. And I'm hoping that their moms are just down below the dam wall, and that's why they haven't kind of stressed too much, and it's why they're just kind of standing. I suppose they've also positioned themselves probably not too bad. They kind of got height up there. It's going to be very difficult for Hosana or Tingana to try and hunt them unless one of them can get behind this little wall where they might walk down and they can grab them. But you're right, Nick, it is very cool to see how different the colors are. Even though all three of them are of a similar size and age, they all have a very different look about them. You can see the smallest one is the darkest one, and then you've got a more kind of rusty color on the left, and then that more normal waterbuck color on the right. So as they get a little bit bigger, so they start to kind of fade a little bit, which is opposite to a lot of the other younger animals. A lot of other younger animals start off quite light and then darken up. If you think of wildebeest in particular, and sable as well, they start off more this color and then they end up going into those kind of dark grays and blacks that you see. So interesting kind of difference between them. But how cute is that? And the little tail as well. Nikki, the reason they're wagging their tails so much is because of flies. So as flies are landing on them, so they're wagging their tail to get rid of them. So they're getting irritated, and flies often congregate around the rear end of antelope species. So unfortunately for them, they get a lot of them. And Nikki in Final Control, which is not the same Nikki that asked the question, it's all getting very Nikki confusing at the moment, says that you can actually see the flies flying about all around them. So that's why they're wagging their tail and making sure they get rid of them. Doing a good job there, little one. Your tail is very, very active and is definitely wagging at a good rate. Carol, they potentially could outrun a leopard. That's if they see a leopard coming. Remember, these are young animals. These guys have got very little experience and are probably on the side of where they just don't really know what's going on too much. They could easily be caught by a wily older cat like Tingana. I mean, he'd be able to force them into areas where it would be easier for him to hunt. But if they saw a leopard coming, yes, they'll outrun it already at this age. They already probably have more stamina than a leopard could have over a long distance. But the problem is for them is that they're very vulnerable because they are small and they are little and they are inexperienced, which means that things like leopards, that's exactly what they're looking for. They like to find small, inexperienced animals on their own. It makes life a lot easier. The only saving grace is that they group together in a little herd. Now, Toby, you say you wish an adult would come by. Me too. It would be nice to have the adults with them. You never like to see baby animals all on their own. The interesting thing about this is I know Steve told me the other day that he saw one female with 4 young ones. Now, I wonder if that female, who has a young one currently, these 3 have not just tried to latch onto that female to try and kind of, have some semblance of security, and that female has now kicked them away to go and find their own moms. But I promise you that there is not a single waterbuck outside of these 3 anywhere that I can see here. Nothing on the open area, nothing that is kind of hanging around that I can see in the thickets. Maybe they're down below the dam wall at the moment, and that's why the little ones are quite chilled. But I would have thought that with us arriving these little ones, if the adults were around, would have gone straight down towards where they are and to try and kind of stay safe. But it seems as though they're not really sure. And when we first got here, they were actually lying down just on the left-hand side here. I didn't really notice them until one of them stood up. But they were just lying off the side of the dam wall by themselves. And like I said, no adults present. So a bit of a strange one. I don't know what would have caused all three of them to lose their moms. Maybe something like wild dogs or something separated the herds, and they've just battled now to try and find where their moms are, and they've now just kind of in a situation where they're lost. But a mother waterbuck generally is very good at trying to kind of find her youngsters and to make sure that she can see them and look after them. So I just want to double check down here, but I don't see anything. So Lara, they do have very pointy tracks. In fact, you wanted to know about their tracks. Let's just go back because there's some really nice waterbuck tracks behind me here. If you just give me 2 seconds. Alright, don't wash away the tracks. Oopsie. Didn't really think that through very well, but here we go. So these are waterbuck tracks on my right hand side that are walking along there. So reversing through puddles of water where there's tracks are never a good idea. But there we go. You can see that it's maybe not quite as pointy as some of the other antelope species we get here, but it still does have quite a sharp point and a very raised ridge area in the middle. So you'll see that this track can be confused sometimes with a wildebeest track. But I find in the wildebeest track, the back end splays a little bit more, and the mound of sand is bigger than what you see on this particular track in the middle section. So that's a waterbuck. Now I'm just trying to listen because somebody just mentioned something. Sorry, last station, just go again. So I'm just listening to the radio. Okay, copy. What's the line up there? Copy that, thank you. Right, so we just got the news that I was looking for and hoping that we would find. There's Mom. Do you see? No, that's Dad over there. So there's the male is on that side. Maybe that's why they were looking at him. The male's just sitting on that little sort of area over there. But we are going to try and meander our way to something that we were hoping we would find in this particular section of the world. And so while I do that, it sends you across to Steve and a nest. Come, little ones.
How surprising. What could it be? I bet you Tingana is sitting around close by, licking his lips at the thought of a young waterbuck for breakfast. But we stopped here for a purpose of, once again, the buffalo grass is growing out like this. We've got the buffalo thorn growing here, and very unassuming in the back there, we have got the nest, called a woven nest of a blue waxbill. And as we approached, the adult flew out of there. And they will use these nests, obviously, not only for breeding, but they will also roost in them in the cold winter nights to come. Because I know we were talking lots about migratory birds, and the blue waxbill is not one of them. It's a small finch-like bird, seed eater, and they use the grass not only for feeding on the seeds of the grass, but also for weaving a little woven ball. Nothing like that of a weaver. They will just take a whole lot of grasses, if I can just demonstrate. I'm not the best weaver in the world, and they will just roll them into sort of a ball. Lots of them, and roll them like that. So it's not much of a weaving as opposed to just a ball. So that is a very nice, unique nest for the blue waxbill, and he's put his nest in a very inaccessible tree. To try and get my hand in there will be quite sore because there's lots of buffalo thorn, sharp, hooked and straight thorns there, which is a very good place for it to secret itself away and to be avoided by everyone because you don't even see it. Herbie, with his eagle eyes, spotted that as we walked past. And we've been on the topic a little bit about soil and geology this morning, and that previous rock I showed you, which I said was granite, it's not actually granite rock. It is the breaking down of a granite rock, whereas here is an actual granite rock. It's very, very hard, and it's made up of a few different types of minerals, namely quartz, as well as mica, which is fool's gold, and then feldspar. Feldspar is the pink sort of little guys in there. The quartz, an example of this is a much larger quartz crystal, and we find these as quite a dominant sort of chemical or mineral component of granite. Okay, so very, very hard rock. Doesn't break down very easily, even though you did see a little bit breaking off there, as opposed to the basalt, which breaks down very, very easy. We don't find many basalt rocks left, just the derivative of the soil that they leave behind. So that is it. Beautiful quartz crystals, very nice and big. And the size of the crystal is determined by where it cooled in the landscape. So if you came up from the bottom surface, you came from the magma deep down in the Earth's crust, and here's the surface of the Earth, and you came up to about there, and you cooled down. The cooling is very, very slow, so it leads to very large crystals. But if you explode onto the Earth's crust in the form of lava, and you land on the Earth's crust, imagine going from magma, which was in the Earth's mantle, which is extremely hot, molten rock, and you land on the surface as a rock, you cool down far quicker than you would if you were underneath the surface still. So the crystals are much smaller, and leads to much softer rock, which is much easier weathered and broken down. So that is a good way of working out the difference between basalt and granite. Fantastic. I do enjoy my rocks. We don't find too many rocks around here because it's all still very flat and the weathering has happened, so we don't find too many beautiful rocks. Ladybird, I am not sure on what type of gemstones we find around here. Further up in a reserve called Salati, where I used to work, is actually an emerald mine there, and they have closed down for some reason, but there are still emeralds within the rock, and those have come about from a process known, or a rock type known as talc schist or soapstone, and those emeralds are actually a metamorphic crystal inside of that metamorphic, which was actually basalt at one stage. It went under extreme pressure like this, and it changed the crystals from whatever they were before into emeralds. So they found emeralds there. I have never found. I did go scratching around in the soil and the rocks there, but I didn't find anything of any great value. But in Botswana, there's lots of diamonds that are found in and around. In Namibia, there are diamonds found all along the coastline there. You cannot go into those areas. As you can imagine, diamonds are quite heavily controlled by the people who have all the money. But in this area, I don't know of any gemstones. Unfortunately, I can't help you with that. The birds are starting to wake up. They've been very quiet. They've probably been very wet. You just heard some Aramark babblers making their very noisy call in the background. Okay. Well, it sounds like Tristan has found something. Let's go and see whose spots he's looking at.
Well, we've got little Hosana, which is what we were hoping to come and find at Chitwa. So he's hidden a little bit at the moment. He was up in a tree and came pounding down as we got here, and then down into the grass where he's now lying completely obscured. So, un-Hosana-like, normally he's a little poser and likes to stay up and kind of have a look. I think it's because there's lots of rutting impalas around. Maybe he decided it'd be better to come down and lie in the grass. But he's sitting here because he actually has a kill at the moment. I can't see where exactly the kill is, but he does have a diker kill somewhere in this area. I just can't see exactly where the kill is itself. Now, if he lies down, we're going to see absolutely nothing of him. It's really long grass at the moment, and you can see this is typical of the summer months, is when the grass gets long like this and the leaves kind of come over. A leopard almost disappears, and if you didn't know that he was actually here, you would have a situation where he would probably have been driven right past. You wouldn't be able to really see him. Now, Hosana, what have you been busy with? Interestingly enough, when I was crossing the dam wall, I also found tracks for Tingana, quite fresh ones that are sort of just at the end of the rain, and so he's also lurking around there. So those little waterbuck need to be very, very careful about staying in that area, otherwise they're going to get themselves into a lot of trouble. But at this stage, he's nowhere to be seen, Tingana, which is a good thing, I suppose, for Hosana, because he'll manage to keep his kill that he has at the moment. Otherwise, he might have a situation where he'll unfortunately lose it if Tingana does come along. So Indigo Girl, he has been busy. Hosana is a busy cat. We know that he seldom likes to sit still and loves to be hunting and moving around and trying to find as much food as is possible. And so we see him kind of around and moving all the time. And he has been busy, I suppose, finding himself a little darker. And I think he actually came off a kill from Torchwood. I know when Taylor had him the other day with Tingana, I'm pretty sure he came out from Torchwood and possibly had himself a bit of a meal that he was then able to kind of deal with. But you see he's kind of looking up into the tree. I don't see the kill in the tree itself, which might be the reason that he's down. Maybe, just maybe, he ended up pulling it down and it's on the ground at the moment. But it's a very obscured view at this stage. So Brittany, Hosana means the little chief or the little prince is the kind of direct translation for it. And he got that because obviously his mom was Kruger, who was the queen of Djuma, and so it made sense to call him the little prince, the little chief, as, well, basically he comes from that lineage. And as it's turned out, he is the little prince. He kind of doesn't really care about anybody else. He just does his thing, and he's an absolutely epic cat. And his relationship currently with, Tingana is absolutely fascinating to me, to watch that kind of interactions that they go through. And Hosana kind of walks up to Tingana and just really doesn't care. As much as Tingana doesn't want him around, he just doesn't care. He's forcing his dad to almost be friends with him, and he does this with Tundi, and he's done with Shadow, and so he seems to be a cat that almost likes company, and we're seeing him follow around all kinds of different animals. So he really is a little character, and I suppose if you are the prince, you're allowed to do all of these things. Maybe he's got that kind of thing where he just says, Mom says I can do it, and so that's why he did it. But he's a very cool cat. I've thoroughly enjoyed time with Hosana over the last year. He's really given us probably more than any of the other leopards, if you think about it. I mean, I know we've had amazing stuff with Tundi and Shidulu and Shadow and even Tingana and Hukamuri, but if you think about just the constant kind of sightings that we get from this particular cat, we are really spoiled. He's given many, many, many insights into leopards that many people probably would argue with if you had to tell them that had no experience of this particular cat. And he's also, seems to just be one of those cats that we see probably more than all the others as well. So he really is a special individual, and whoever inherits him, if he moves away from this area, is going to inherit a very, very special individual and going to be very fortunate. I have a sneaky feeling he's just going to be one of those leopards that's just not going to take this I have to go somewhere else for, as the rule. He's going to try and probably have a situation where he's going to try and stay here for as long as he can. Ultimately, Dad is not really pushing him away. Hukamuri seemed to chase him the other day, but it didn't really affect Hosana much. If you think about how Hosana literally just went straight towards where kind of Hukamuri had chased him the very next day, it seems that he's not really that kind of concerned with what goes on, and he's pretty happy to continue to be around sort of Djuma area. So I think hopefully he's going to stay. I mean, obviously it's going to be an interesting one. There's so much upheaval in the leopard world at the moment, and it could very well lead to him being pushed on, but he seems to have kind of thought to himself that Chitwa is his, and that he's going to take this in the sort of southeastern corner of Djuma for now. So that's fine by us. As long as we get to see him, I'll be very happy with him taking over Chitwa, and even every now and then popping onto Djuma in that southeastern corner. Interesting that Hukamuri still hasn't really kind of pursued Hosana that much, and also this new male that we're seeing on Little Gari, how he hasn't chased either Tingana or Hosana away just yet. Good. Well, we're going to sit with him and try and see, maybe he's going to get up and move. Hosana sometimes doesn't always rest for long. And while we do that, let's send you back across to Steve, who I think is staring at one of, our ugliest creatures we see.
Oh, it's not ugly, Tristan. It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as Hosana, I must add. But it is a slug, ladies and gentlemen. And what it's trying to do, it was moving across the road. It's trying to camouflage itself with little quartz crystals from the granitic soils we've been talking about. Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that marvelous? Let's turn him over. The bottom side is the very sticky side where it moves. This is called the foot of the bottom. He's covered in the gravel from the soil itself, so it's very hard to really see. His mouth is over here, and they feed on vegetation. They are grazers, very much like a snail itself, and their chainsaw-like mouth parts are in there, and as they move over stuff, they're kind of vegetation, that is, they sort of grind it down like a chainsaw would do, without the noise, of course. But he's quite sticky and quite slimy, and he was trying to move across the road when we caught him, trying to camouflage himself with all of those crystals. I'm going to put him back, though. Ivy and Kalina, yuck, you say. Poor little guy. I'm just going to put him back. Not so yuck, really. Just a little creature doing his thing, moving through the environment and trying to survive. And it is nice and moist out there at the moment, which means it's easier for him to move around. Much more difficult to move around if you are a dry animal. They need moisture to sort of slide across the ground. So, someone who's not sliding, Brentley Smith, he's driving.
Well, I've been trying to find a decent audio recording of that cataphractus, Messiops cataphractus, the slender-snouted crocodile roaring, but I can't really get a good one. But they get much louder and much more scary than that. That's the best one I can find. Now, they are quite a little-known species and quite endangered through most of their reign. But you can hear that from sometimes a kilometer away, and it says, and I think there's quite a lot of theories now that the Makalamambembe from Lake Tal is actually just a really big and very loud male cataphractus. Slender-snouted crocodile. Those of you who've watched the video of our recce to Congo, there's some clips of slender-snouted crocodiles in that video that we saw while we were traveling along those waterways. So, yeah, I'm quite lucky, I think. So there's different subspecies of slender-snouted and dwarf crocodile, but of the main sort of species of crocodile in Africa, I've caught by hand all. Well, I've caught Nile, slender snout, and dwarf crocodile, or for various different reasons. Worked with a guy up in Gabon who's sort of the leading world expert on crocodiles, and specifically Central and West African crocodiles. So we caught some of the Nile crocodiles that go into the ocean in that area and swim quite big distances in the ocean between different lagoons to take little genetic skin samples from them. Same with dwarf and slender-snouted crocodiles, and we even found some slender-snouted crocodile nests. So what's quite interesting about your dwarf crocodile and your slender-snouted crocodiles that occur in those Congo Basin forests. So Nile crocodiles and a lot of the other crocodilian species rely on open sandbanks and stuff to lay their eggs, so the sun can heat them up and keep them warm, and then so having different layers of sort of sexes depending on the heat of the nest. So your females will come from the bottom, your males from the top. The higher the temperature, the more males, the lower the temperature, more females. So that's a big problem where you get exotic and invasive plants coming into certain areas because they end up turning the nest all female, and you run out of males for breeding. Now, your forest crocodiles, like your slender-snouted and your dwarf crocodile, of course, living in those closed forests, it's near impossible for them to find decent breeding grounds if you had to have that open sandbank. So how they've evolved to avoid this is they'll build what they need. So they make massive mounds out of leaf litter, and a slender-snouted crocodile sort of this big will build a mound that's probably about sometimes up to 1.5 to 2 meters in size, and of all the detritus and rotting leaf litter and stuff like that, and then lay their eggs in the center of that. and the decomposition of all those leaves and sticks and stuff like that creates heat. So that's how they keep their nest warm, from the decomposing vegetable matter that they pile up around their eggs. So very interesting how they've evolved to survive in those forest areas. Their diet is also incredibly varied. So the big crocs obviously need big things to eat, like Nile crocodiles. The slender snouts couldn't really attack a human being or anything like that. Their nose is very small, very thin. Teeth far more needle-like than a Nile crocodile, so far more a pescivore. It specializes in fish and obviously insects and occasionally the odd bird or whatnot, but very seldom. Dwarf crocodile, actually one of their main diets, depending on where you are, is frogs and bats and stuff, and they are, out of the three species, the least water reliant. So they will build these burrows in the forest, and underneath. Eventually they'll get down to groundwater, so they have a pool, their own private pool in their burrow. I've actually climbed down dwarf crocodile burrows before to try to see what's going on, as you do, of course. Now, as Nikki says, how do they catch bats? So quite often, well, there's a whole population of them that live in a section of caves in Gabon that have actually become sort of orange. They've changed color because they don't ever really go out of the bat cave. But in the burrows that they live in, the bats will actually, some certain species of bats will utilize their burrows in the forest as a place to roost. So they'll fall into the water and they'll eat them there. But crabs is another big favorite of dwarf crocodiles. They actually hunt the forest crabs quite frequently. So it's very interesting that how the different animals are able to adapt and evolve to different environments. Now, it's very seldom you find many slender-snouted crocodiles near where they're Nile crocodiles, because the Nile crocodiles will eat them up. So in Gabon, where you had all three species in one area, the Nile crocodiles were in the big open water and the lagoons around, right along the coast. The further inland you went and the deeper into the forest, where you lacked all those big sandbanks, etc., your slender snouted would be on the main waterways. What is that there? Do you see what I'm looking at, Craig? I think it's a termite mound through the distance there. Let me just have a look with the binos. Yeah, it's a termite mound, unfortunately. And then your dwarf crocodiles actually live out in the forest, and they'll walk around in the forest, sort of far more terrestrial than the other crocodile species. Okay, well, let's head you back to Steve, who's found something that's creepy and crawly.
It's very creepy, but it's not very crawly at the moment, and very hard to really keep it in frame because it is not moving very well. A beautiful caterpillar-like stick. I think it's absolutely marvelous, the camouflage that this thing is practicing. It's just holding on with its front legs, or one of those its back legs. I think that's the head. I'm not even sure. Now I can see it. Look at those eyes. We think those are the eyes. And there's the body. As you go back, there's a false sort of sticking off the top there. Look at the legs holding on, and then its bottom is in the air in a very sharp little fashion. I have no idea what this is, ladies and gentlemen. If you, by any chance, know what species this might be, please let me know. Some form of caterpillar, I'm thinking. Otherwise, it's a very strange-looking stick. I can't believe how well it matches the actual branch that it's on as well. It's on the branch of a small white berry bush. No white berries on it at the moment, but he matches it beautifully. It's almost as if it was designed for this particular tree itself. And it is not uncommon. There are a lot of caterpillar species out there that, or larvae, should I say, the butterflies that lay their eggs specifically on certain species, and then those larvae or the eggs will hatch, and the caterpillars, which are the larvae of the butterflies, will feed exclusively on the plant that it is put on. Some of them are over a broad variety of trees, and some are very species specific. So this one potentially could be a species specific to the whiteberry bush. It is marvelous, Patrick. I do agree with you. Take your screenshots. The wind is moving a little bit. Yeah, Sophia, I think we go with that. An alien caterpillar. Indeed. But how marvelous is that sort of camouflage? So if a bird was moving along here, I think it would find it very hard to identify that caterpillar as a food source. Well, marvelous. Thanks for that, Ferg. Very nice attempt. Nice caterpillar for us for the morning. Definitely a creepy crawly. Well, it seems like Tristan might have had a better visual of that young chief. Let's go back over to him.
We do, well, a better visual is maybe slight exaggeration, but at least we can see more spots, and at least his kind of back of his head is visible, but he's fast asleep at the moment. He's, I think, had probably a good eat this morning, and after taking his kill up into the tree and then bringing it back down again for some odd reason, you know Hosana, he does these funny things. I actually think he's done it on purpose. And normally what happens is a leopard will take a kill into a tree and they leave it up there and then they just go back up and down. But Hosana's clever, is what he's done is he's brought this carcass down and he shoved it into the long grass. Now for Tingana or Kachava or any lions that potentially could be in the area, it is almost impossible now for them to spot that carcass, as opposed to if it was dangling from a big marula tree in this area. If it was dangling from the tree, much easier for any of those other cats to spot it and to come to where he is and feed off it. He also knows that in all likelihood there's going to be very little hyena movement during the course of the day. So bring it down, put it on the ground where it's easier to eat. It's also out of the sight and out of the way of marauding male leopards in the form of Tingana. And then tonight, if the hyenas start to come back, then take it back up into the tree and rest there. At the end of the day, the kill, which I can't see, to be honest, even in this long grass, I just have no idea where he's put it. I'll try and find it just now, but it apparently is a little diker that he's got. He's kind of then put it down right next to the base of the tree, and then he can just pop it straight back up should he need to, if anything arrives. So I suppose it's very clever from him, and I wonder how he's learned that, because he must have had it stolen at some point for him to have that kind of behavior. Romit, I don't think Hosana is ready quite yet to be fighting for territory. I think he's brave enough and kind of got this sort of demeanor where he doesn't really care about other leopards too much and kind of just roams around. But I don't think he's ready to fight with anyone. He's still a young boy. Everybody keeps kind of thinking of Hosana as, a 3-4-year-old male. He's not. He's only 2, and that's still very small. And so I don't think he's going to be fighting just yet. I think he's just going to try and wing it as far as he can without having to fight with anyone. The thing is, though, is that he's already starting to get to the same size as Hukumuri. So if he can just eke out another year without being chased, I reckon he would be a serious competitor to Hukumuri.